Miles Morales has been one of the biggest topics of discussion in pop culture in recent years, and it makes sense. With the Spider-Verse movies being as successful as they are, why wouldn't he be? But with the success of a movie, there's always the idea of synergy. You know, it's always kind of around the corner. The fear that your favorite character who was always written a certain way or portrayed a certain way will be changed to fit what is most popular at the time because the movie takes off with that characterization. With Miles, though, this hasn't really been what has been holding his character back, at least in my opinion. While it has happened in some capacity, the main thing that I think is starting to affect Miles's character is the same thing that has been affecting Peter's character for the longest time, and it's the dreaded status quo. So in today's video, I want to address this by first looking at what makes him different, then why it's important that it doesn't happen. So with all the preamble out the way, let's get it done. Miles from his very inception was always set up to be different from Peter. And I don't just mean his skin color. So if you're gonna go down in the comments and make a joke about that, get it off. I don't really care, bro. It's corny, it's overplayed. Just please don't. Actually, please don't do that. I would love if you didn't do that. Here's a challenge. Don't comment on Miles' skin color down in the comments. I would love that. But Miles is the proverbial successor, you know, the definitive answer to who is next in line to become Spider-Man when the theoretical day comes where Peter eventually walks away from the mantle of Spider-Man, because we all know that is never gonna happen, ever. Marvel is going to have that boy in stories till the day he dies. They don't know what to do with it. If you think they don't know what to do with him now, imagine the next 10, 20 years. Peter's gonna be they're probably gonna make him 25 again, if we're being honest. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they made him 19 again and made Miles like 10 and just have that be how Spider-Man comics go, because dude, they don't know what they're doing. Anyways, back on topic. His very creation meant progression of the story. You know, this is one of the reasons why I think he was such a cool addition to the Spider-Man mythos. He came about at a time when Spider-Man comics were still doing new and interesting things with the character. You remember when that was a thing? When Spider-Man comics were actually doing new and interesting things that were fun with the character, you know? And sure, by this point, we had already gotten the most controversial stories that we now still feel the repercussions of to this day, from all the way back in, what was it, 2008? Was that when Brand New Day came out? And, you know, actually, I'll say this, or was it One More Day? Whatever day it was, in terms of title, it produced a pretty good Spider-Man movie, so I'll take that. But Miles was free from all that. It was a fresh start, a character that could literally be anything that the writer wanted him to be, because he didn't have decades of history weighing him down, which was the entire premise of the Ultimate Universe. It was supposed to be a fresh jumping on point for new readers to get into Marvel Comics. So they're just like, all right, this Ultimate Universe that we got going on right now, pretty good. Let me go check out what they got in the mainline universe. And you're just like, wow, this is really shit compared to the whatever. Anyways, Peter from the Ultimate Universe was technically like this at the time, but there always will be story beats that he would have to hit. Gwen Stacy and Uncle Ben always have to die. And I know that in the new Ultimate Universe that, again, went to shit. Uncle Ben's alive, but Aunt May's dead. So there's a trade-off there, you know? Equivalent exchange type shit. Full Metal Alchemist type shit, but whatever. Mary Jane will always be the main love of Peter's life until we're talking about whatever bullshit they're cooking in the main 616 universe. Please stop with a will they, won't they? Just put them together, or just don't have them together at all. And I do like that she's Venom. I think that's cool. That's a cool little thing to do with her character. But bro, I'm just so tired of Peter and MJ doing the, oh, are they gonna be together or are they not gonna be together? Like, let it go, bro. But the point is, there's always a loose outline of events that a Peter Parker of any universe has to go through. And as I'm writing this, I now understand how the writers of Spider-Verse came to the idea of the whole canon event thing in Across the Spider-Verse, right? With Miles, you never knew where the story would go, though. Sure, he was going to always face off against some classic Spider-Man villains. It makes sense. He's a version of Spider-Man, but he was even younger than Peter when he got bitten by the spider. Not to mention that he had both of his parents that were still alive. I'm not sure. Actually, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Miles' mom is alive again, so he has both parents again. So there was drama to be told from that point of the story. And Miles also just didn't want to be Spider-Man. He didn't feel a calling the same way that Peter did. He just wanted to have a normal life, because Miles didn't have that traumatic event that Peter had in his life with the death of Uncle Ben. Ironically, Peter dying is that traumatic turning point for Miles. You know, Peter died And a 13-year-old kid seeing the death of a kid not that much older than him stressed him out. You know, he's stressed out about the fact that it's now up to him to step up and pick up where Peter left off. And absolutely no one, except Aunt May, ironically enough, outside of this, supported him. You know, that his time in the Ultimate Universe was well spent, and I did love it. But, you know, outside of his time in the Ultimate Universe, though, once he was transferred over to the main Marvel Universe full time is where I believe the problem started to arise for Miles. He was no longer the one and only Spider-Man anymore. He had to be there alongside the original, which kind of hurts his character a lot, because the one that's definitively just not going anywhere. Peter in the main 616 universe just isn't going anywhere. So the point of Miles's character is kind of minute now. So storytelling wise, in my own opinion, Miles is about to run into a problem. The same way Peter was going to be stunted is the same way Miles would be stunted. Mainline Peter isn't allowed to grow past a certain point in the story because they want to keep telling stories with him and have him be the everyman relatable guy, even though we're not going to get into it. I'm not going to complain that much in this video. You know, he isn't allowed to have a concrete relationship, a job, or anything really, which again is antithetical to Miles's character in the sense that he comes from the Ultimate Universe, which is defined by its separation from all the withholding of the growth and change. Miles in the Ultimate Universe was supposed to be a progression of the story. That's Miles's whole thing. He progresses the Spider-Man mythos.
Miles, you on your way.
When do I know I'm Spider-Man?
You won't. That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
I want to take this time to say thank you guys so much for the support that you've been showing the channel over the past few weeks. You know, the last video that I posted was a repost from February that only had 40 views on it to this day. Just to give you an idea. And now it's almost at 1,000 views and still going, probably at 1,000 already. So I do want to thank you guys so much for, you know, reminding me that just because a video doesn't get the views that I want doesn't mean that it's not a quality video. So, you know, we're also just trying to still hit 2,000 subs by the end of the month. We're currently at 1,909 subs, so 91 more to go as of the recording of this video. So if you're enjoying, you know, please consider leaving a subscribe and hit that noti bell down there. You get the videos when they drop. But now let's get back to it.
Okay, let's do this one last time, yeah? For real this time. This is it. My name is Miles Morales. I was bitten by a radioactive spider, and for like 2 days, I've been the one and only Spider-Man.
So since the introduction of his character, Miles has been relaunched 5 separate times over the course of the past, 14 or 15 years since his introduction, right? With this most recent one though, I can't help but say that it feels a little bit different from the past. And in the past, when Miles has been relaunched, for the most part, it made sense. The first time it was to rebrand and establish him as the Ultimate Spider-Man, right? When Miles came onto the scene, he was in Ultimate Comics Spider-Man. I think that's what the name of the comic was, and that was based on Peter as the Ultimate Spider-Man, right? So yeah, relaunching him and giving him the title of Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man made sense for the story. The second time was when he transferred over into the main Marvel Universe. So again, it makes sense. He's going from one universe that's now defunct into the mainline comics of universe. So yeah, you're gonna relaunch his comic to, one, I guess, get some interest into him again, because that's kind of why they always do relaunches. But also, it just makes sense that he's transferring over, so you're gonna relaunch him, right? The other times were just when he was going to be written by different authors. So yeah, made sense. You know, of course they want to do their own spin on the character, so it's like a fresh start, a fresh take. And while this most recent reboot follows that same idea, it feels much more akin to the last time Peter was relaunched last year. And if you know anything about that, I personally didn't like it. It was annoying and it was horrible. They made him look like a man-child. And if you're a comic fan, which if you're watching this video, you most likely are, you definitely understand what I'm referring to and what I'm talking about, right? And while this new relaunch only has one issue out, the most defining part of it that I've seen on the internet and lots of other people have seen, and since I've actually read the comic, has come from the panel where Miles says, and I quote, "I finally feel like I'm getting the hang of the Spider-Man thing." And to give you an idea of how stupid and dumb this sounds, remember where I said Miles became Spider-Man at the age of 13? Well, now he's around like 17 or 18 in the story, which means that Miles has been Spider-Man for at least 4 years by this point. At least he could be 4 or 5 years, but at least 4 years. He shouldn't just be getting the hang of this Spider-Man thing, bro. Imagine me saying at the end of college, wow, I finally, like 4 years into college, be like, wow, I finally feel like I'm getting the hang of this college thing. What have you been doing for the past 4 years? You're finally getting the hang of this college thing. How did you make it here? That's what I'm trying to like get at, right? It should just be a part of his life now. Sure, he can still struggle to balance everything. Everyone does. And I imagine being a big time superhero makes that even harder than it does for the average Joe Schmo like me. But Miles has had more experiences than even Peter has had at this age, bro. And I'm not saying that Peter had all that shit figured out, but he wasn't going around saying, I finally feel like I'm getting the hang of the Spider-Man thing, right? Miles has survived a universal collapse. He's been tortured for months and had his clone saga, his own clone saga, etc., and all that stuff made, right? I could go on and on. Miles shouldn't be set up as a kid who's just figuring things out. He's getting ready to go off to college, which I believe are the most formative and important years for any Spider character, because modern day Peter Parker, like all that stuff is from college, bro. If you've watched any of my Spider-Man videos, you know that most of Peter Parker's comic history, other than when he, you know, at least in the movies and the TV shows, comes from his college life. That's the most important thing in forming who Peter is, right? And with the way things are looking, it doesn't seem like this is ever going to happen. The closer we get to something as big as Miles going to college, I think they're more likely to push it off. You know, Miles may be his own character, but he will always be in a relation to Peter when it comes to the 616 universe, which, as cool as it is to see him interacting with the mainline heroes, and it does make things easier for the writers, as the old Ultimate line is very much dead, so the characterization of those characters can vary because there's no comics of them going on right now, right? I'm not gonna lie, while some people may not have liked it, I think the Anansi and the totem stuff was some of the coolest things that have been introduced in the Spider-Man mythos. That last issue or run, the last run of Miles Morales comics that we had going on, I liked it. Where he's a vampire, he had the vibranium suit, he, you know, got the energy sword and all that kind of stuff. I think it's cool. It's differentiating from Peter. People always talk about like, oh, he keeps getting all these new powers, so they want to set him up to be more powerful than Peter. Nah, bro, that shit's just cool. Rule of cool. Follow the rule of cool. That shit's just fucking cool. And if it makes sense in the story, even fucking better. I really hope it makes sense in the story, actually. You know, it would have made way more sense, again, with the Anansi stuff, with the whole web of life and destiny thing, for Anansi to be at the center of it all from a mystical standpoint. Because if you're going to introduce mysticism into the Spider-Man mythos, just have it be through one of the most popular Spider-God characters in literal history, if we're being honest, not just in Marvel, just in general. Also, Anansi being a storyteller just fits the whole web of life and destiny thing perfectly. Marvel, it was right there the whole goddamn time. I'm just saying, right? But Miles is a character that has been marked by growth over the course of his time in comics, and being attached to such a big IP, yet being malleable at the same time, is his biggest strength, and I really think they need to play with that, right? I would hate to see all that potential be wasted the same way that Peter's adulthood has been wasted in the past decade, for just calling a spade, because Miles is more than just another Spider person. Again, he is the definitive answer to the question of what happens to Spider-Man after Peter Parker either dies or walks away from the mantle. And yes, I know none of these things are ever going to happen, but, you know, hypothetically speaking, just, you know, put that out there. And I believe we should continue to treat him as such, especially considering the explosion in popularity of the character in the past 8 years with the Spider-Verse movies. But that's the video. You know, as usual, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you made it this far into the video, you definitely enjoyed the video. Just be honest with me, right? So please consider leaving a like, comment, and subscribe if you did, and I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.